If your organization is connected to the internet, you are experiencing cyber attacks. Today's landscape for computer security is more complicated and diverse than ever before. Some of the most well-known and trusted companies have experienced intrusions that have resulted in publicly disclosed data breaches. Understanding the types of attacks your organization is experiencing will better equip you to defend against them and to determine whether or not previous attacks have been successful. It is frequent that cyber attacks against organizations are successful and the victim is not aware until the worst case scenario occurs. An external entity notifies the organization that they've experienced a data breach or system compromise. In a recent data breach report, 61% of companies that experienced a data breach were notified by a third party that it had occurred. Today's cyber attacks are more stealthy and malicious than ever before. There is direct intent to remain unnoticed for as long as possible. Many of today's sophisticated data breaches remain unnoticed for months. Fortunately, there are mechanisms to detect security breaches and the existence of unknown intruders. 86% of data breach victims had evidence available to them that the data breach had occurred. As many of our incident response engagements demonstrate, traditional security protection alone is not enough. A recent industry study found that antivirus products detect, on average, 19% of new malware attacks, and the success rate only increases to 62% after 30 days. Signature-based protections do not provide enough protection value against today's advanced threats. Even the most security-minded organizations that conduct routine security testing often underestimate their level of exposure. Sword & Shield realizes that traditional security assessment engagements have suffered from a crucial step. Conventional practice is for companies to remediate the security vulnerabilities that are found during the testing. However, few organizations determine whether or not an attacker successfully exploited the vulnerability during the time frame of exposure before the remediation occurred. As this diagram demonstrates, the timeline between the disclosure of a vulnerability and the installation of the security patch provides a level of exposure that warrants attention. In this example, a vulnerability was discovered on January 19th and disclosed on January 25th. During the same time frame, an exploit was developed and released to exploit this vulnerability. A typical life cycle of patch development and release can be upwards to a month. In this example, the patch was released on March 9th. Within many organizations, a monthly patch cycle is in place and the patch is finally applied on April 1st. The timeline of exposure for this scenario was the date of the exploit release, February 1st, until the patch was applied on April 1st. Depending on the technical details of the vulnerability, the organization may have been vulnerable for 2 months. After the application of the patch, it is unlikely that the system was analyzed to determine if a breach occurred during this time frame. Sword & Shield has developed a data breach threat analysis offering to assist organizations in determining the types of attacks they are experiencing, the origin of the attacks, and if evidence of success exists. We accomplish this by gathering, correlating, and analyzing information from critical points on your network. Firewalls are the external point and maintain valuable information when determining an organization's threat landscape. When analyzing incoming and outgoing network traffic, malicious activity can be uncovered, demonstrating the types, sophistication, and potential success of previous attacks. Web applications are today's primary attack vector of success. The logging available, when analyzed properly, will disclose any malicious activities that have been occurring and the level of sophistication. Network captures contain the network activity occurring within an organization. With proper analysis, malicious software undetected by signature-based protections can be identified, along with their actions. Centralized authentication databases maintain information possibly disclosing threats attempting to compromise passwords to gain further access into an organization's network. Leveraging our extensive experience from our penetration testing services, Sword & Shield understands the latest cyber attack techniques and the residual evidence that remains to detect a potential compromise to your organization. Using the experience we have gained from our incident response services, we will analyze evidence from various sensitive points of your environment to understand the breadth and critical nature of your cyber attacks.